Smart.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for joining us. It's March 16th, 2021 for our special meeting. Public notice of this meeting was given pursuant to the Public Meeting Act, given by the board secretary in the following manner: posting written notice of the official school bulletin board at the administration building on March 10th, 2021, transmitted notice to the Courier Post and Philadelphia Inquirer on March 10th, 2021, and transmitted notice to the clerk of Cherry Hill Township on March 10th, 2021. Could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And now to you, Mrs. Sugars.
Yep. Let's go back. Let's do, okay. Mrs. Arroyo.
Oh, you're muted, Rosie.
Here.
Ms. Friedel.
Here.
Ms. Matlack, Mrs. Matlack.
There we go.
Here.
Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you.
Now you can hear me? Okay. Yes.
Mrs. Neary.
Here.
Mr. Avadia.
Here.
Mrs. Schultz.
Here.
Ms. Stern.
Here.
Mrs. Stratton.
Here.
And Mrs. Tong.
Here.
Okay, great. That actually brings us to our first public comment, which can be any item this evening. And as usual, please state your full name and address, and there'll be 3 minutes. Okay, Rick Short.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight, I want to speak again about the budget. We have an estimated $8 million. Oh, my address, Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. We have
Thank you.
we have $8 million in capital reserves. And please. Hello?
We can still
Am I
hear
still
you.
there?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Please consider adding $10,000 for electric locks to the current airlock vestibules that we talked about in 2018. Jeff Gale, the director of the New Jersey Security Department of Education, says he's disappointed to see some districts that have vestibules and don't use them. Districts having something that can so easily be changed with electric locks. Also in the budget, last year, there was money earmarked by Ms. Tong for sidewalk repairs at Carusi and at Kingston. Again, these are not little cracks. These are major dips that could injure students, teachers, staffs. Also, we still have not finished the interior doors of our buildings for security locks. Doors can't lock. It's not safe in schools when doors can't lock. I can't believe this continues on. Finally, pedestrian crossings for areas that children have to walk in front of. Example is Kingston. Another one I've heard about is Barclay. There are areas where children, when they come into school, they have to cross in front of traffic. Yes, we might have someone there, but there's no other traffic signals. You see this in other schools, like in Burlington Township, where they use these pedestrian crossing warning signs. Please consider adding these things to make our schools safer in the 21-22 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Okay. Was there anyone else who wanted to make comment before we move to the written submissions? Okay, Alana Yaras. And please state full name and address.
Alana Yaris, 6 Gately Court. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to know, last year when the schools closed, there was a policy put into place that the schools buildings would no longer be rented to outside sources or vendors. And this seems like this would have been income coming into the district. Has this policy been changed in the past year with COVID still going on, or is there a way to make up this money in the budget so that some of the income money that comes in for the budget is covering this? And then the second thing is, I see a lot of you on the screen and not so many of you in person. Is there any talk of the board coming back in person? We've sent our students in person, but our board still remains at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Yaras. Next, we have Laura Einhorn.
Hi, Ann Einhorn, 1017 Exmoor Road. So I'm a little confused. Are you currently voting on the preliminary budget? And if you are, at what tax levy? Usually I'm not so confused, but I am confused this evening. So I'll just make a statement. I sincerely hope this is not a zero tax levy. It is a dangerous precedent to set. I think I mentioned that in an earlier email to all of you. Secondly, if it's 1.09, that's terrific, because you'll still be a hero in the community's eyes because you're not going to the full 2%. So I'd really like to know what you're voting on the preliminary budget, because I thought last week we were having ongoing discussion about the budget to the public before you voted. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Einhorn. Okay. Okay, I don't see any other hands. And Mrs. Sugars, do we have any written submissions this evening?
Yes, I have one. This is from Dr. Potowitz, 110 Kilbourne Drive. If you Google search SFRA district profile and click on the link that will take you to the Education Law Center, you will find some interesting graphs and information concerning uncapped aid and the district state aid to education, all district received over the period of SFRA. The ELC uses the terms required state aid versus actual state aid. In 1 year, our required state aid was $44.3 million versus actual state aid of $12.7 million. That is over a $31 million difference in just 1 year. Imagine what that would have paid for. School board and/or administration, please put that graph on the district's website so that our community understands how much they have been cheated during SFRA alone. I keep on mentioning the statewide article about Chesterfield. That community and everyone else knows how much they were cheated by the state. Look at the graphs. Just before full day kindergarten started, I brought up how the state was shorting our community again. The state appears to have decided that they would use a multiplier of 1/2 instead of 1. When calculating our state aid, they in effect cut our kindergarten population in half. It was estimated at the time the cost of the state's miscalculation to our community was around $400,000, but the cost of the miscalculation was even higher because the popularity of full day kindergarten versus half day kindergarten was not taken into account. Think what those funds could have been used for. The PDF enclosed is Senate Bill 3488, State of New Jersey 2019 legislator, introduced March 4th, 2021. Bill makes it easier for regionalization into county school districts or all-purpose and limited purpose regional school district. What defines a limited purpose regional school district? Administration, school board attorney? Can you please tell or find us the answer? And that is it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our action agenda. And there are no items this evening for curriculum and instruction. But Dr. Malash, did you want to go over a few items prior to moving business and facilities?
I do. Thank you very much, Mrs. Neer. I'm actually going to ask Mrs. Sugars to deliver another presentation tonight, just to go over in detail again about what it is that the board is being asked to vote on. What the numbers look like, what changed and what's changed from last week in the discussions to where we are this week. So she has a presentation to deliver. And again, just as we did with the one from last week, we'll put that up on the website. It'll go up tomorrow. But it's a full presentation again, because I think it's important that everybody, again, is refamiliarized with what it is that we're discussing. So I will turn it over to Mrs. Sugars.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, hopefully you can all see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about the 2021-2022 initial submission budget. This budget is due to the county office prior to next Monday, which is March 22nd. We spoke about the budget last week at the board meeting, and now we've since then made some revisions, and we're going to talk about what those revisions are tonight. So if we look at the budget breakdown here, this has not changed significantly from our conversations last night. And again, as when I presented last week, I spoke about how we break all of our many budget lines down into some broad categories so that we can get through the numbers quickly. So the first portion of the budget that we take a look at are our educational costs. These are directly attributable to classrooms, classifications, basic skills bilingual, extracurricular, and athletics. This has not changed significantly since we spoke last week. The only numbers that changed in this section of the budget was under the extracurricular and athletics lines. We added some additional things there, which we'll talk about later. Everything else at this point is the same. And then if we switch over to our non-educational or our support or operational costs, these numbers did not change at all from last week. And in this category, we have our out-of-district tuition. We have student services, which are things like child study teams, guidance offices, extraordinary services. We have curriculum, PD, and media services, administration, and administration covers everything from the superintendent's office to the business office to the principal's offices and the technology office. That is the state definition of administration. Maintenance to security, that includes maintenance, that includes custodial, grounds, and security, transportation, and then employee benefits. And none of these numbers have changed from last week. We're still looking at a $4.3 million increase, about 3.8% from the prior year. And you can see that the bulk of that increase is coming in the employee benefits line. And then the final portion of our general fund budget that we're taking a look at is our capital outlay budget. There were some changes made to the construction line in this budget. We were able to put some projects back into the budget, and that's where they would go, into that construction line there. So we're still looking at a reduction. We had a large project that we did last year through the capital reserve account. So we're spending less money this year with the capital reserve account. And that's the bulk of what the difference is between the 2 years. So you can see that we have almost a $6.5 million decrease in that line, about 47.4%. So our overall general fund budget at this point is $222,545,302. This is $278 above what it was last year, about 0.1%. So if we look at that graphically, we can see how just those categories that I just went over, kind of how that breaks down. Regular education, special education, you can see all the different categories there. To the right, you can see mainly the educational costs. To the left, it's more of the operational costs. But you can see how our budget breaks down with those different categories and the percentages that are associated with them. And this did not change significantly from last week. So our capital reserve account, this did not change either. We had talked about a couple of smaller projects that we were going to do, some roof replacements at Hart, Johnson, Payne, and Rosa. We had selected these areas because of where they are in their roofing warranties. By doing this work, it'll extend the warranties on those buildings through 2030. We have generator replacements for 3 of our buildings. This will complete all of our generator replacements except for 2 buildings. It'll cover all of the elementary schools, so all of our buildings will have generators. And then we will continue our ADA work. This will be at Beck and Payne, and all of this will be funded by the capital reserve account. And the total amount is $3.6 million for that. So if we look at our budget a different way, we often talk about salaries, benefits. We are a personnel-driven organization, obviously, and so the bulk of our budget is salaries and benefits and other. And we talked a couple weeks ago about what other is and what makes up other, and how much of other is really fixed costs like transportation and tuition and utilities and trash pickups and those kinds of things. There is not a tremendous amount of what we would call discretionary income that's in our budget each year. And you can see here that true to form, our salaries and benefits are still 72 to 75% of our budget. Other is reduced. A lot of that is due to the capital reserve account, but other encompasses everything that is not a salary or a benefit. And you can see again, our increase is $278,000 over the prior year, about 0.1%. So if we look at the other side and we look at our revenue breakdown, you can see here that the budget that's proposed tonight has a tax increase of $900,000. It's 0.49%. The max we can increase our budget each year without any kind of spending growth limitation adjustment is 2%. So this is well below the 2%. And we're also walking away from 1.9 million, not dollars, but 1.9 million in taxing authority, where we could raise the taxes above the 2% by the 1.9 million. And banked cap means that previously we didn't go to our full taxing authority, and therefore we're given the opportunity to carry those that taxing authority over for 3 years. This is the last year, the 21-22 school year, where we either can use it or lose it. And so we are not going to use that bank cap this year. We will generate bank cap this year because we're not going to the full 2%. But so the increase is $900,000. In terms of our miscellaneous revenues, that number is going to stay the same. Our state aid, we did receive more state aid this year, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We also are bumping up our allocation for extraordinary aid because we have been receiving a lot more than we've been budgeting in the past. Federal aid is our semi-aid. Fund balance is, we talked about kind of our own savings that we put back into the budget annually. And then capital reserve account is $3.6 million. And again, you can see $222 million budget. The increase again is about 0.1%. And graphically, if we look at that, we can see that our taxes and our capital reserve and our fund balance, which really are, coming from the town of Cherry Hill to fund our budget, is 87% of our budget. And the rest of our budget comes from other sources. State aid is 12%. Federal aid is so little, it doesn't really have a percentage. And then our miscellaneous revenues is about 1% of our budget. So we look back again at state aid quickly. So we were very pleased to get more state aid this year. We had started the 2021 school year at almost $22 million in state aid. That was adjusted last summer because of the pandemic. They reduced our state aid, and we actually reduced our budget to accommodate that decrease in state aid. We did all of that through projects, capital projects, and through the B&G department. So we did have a reduction in our budget last year. We were very pleased to get additional state aid this year. And if you compare the 2 years, it's 2.8 million more than we received originally, and 5.1 more than we received once the state aid was adjusted. So we're always happy to see those numbers moving in the right direction. And so let's go back and take a look at kind of where we started. So this was the tax impact for the original proposed budget. It was a $1.9 million increase in taxes, and the percentage for that was 1.09%. The annual tax impact to get there was $56.39, and that's on the average assessed home of $225,000. So that was the budget that was proposed by administration. It was requested that we take a look at a zero tax impact budget. And so that's what was presented on the agenda last week. We had a 0% tax increase, which would have not, obviously would have been no tax impact on the average assessed home. And so this week, we've kind of come to a compromise. So the board had asked that we look at kind of coming in somewhere in the middle. So as we look at this budget, again, it's a $900,000 tax increase. It's a 0.49% increase over the previous year. And the tax impact, the annual tax impact on the average assessed home is $25.49. So just under $2 a month. And so what changes did we make to the budget to get there? So we added to the budget, we had an additional funding request for some extracurricular and sports activities, robotics, esports, unified sports. So we were able to add those to the budget. We had not added them to the budget to get to the zero tax impact budget. And then we were able to reinstate some projects that we had cut to get down to the zero tax impact budget, some flooring replacements and asbestos abatement. A lot of our flooring, as you know, has asbestos tile underneath of it. Paving, which I think this winter has done quite the number on our parking lots that were not in great shape to begin with. So we'll be able to do some of that and take care of some of those areas. Athletic field improvements includes replacing some backstops that need to be replaced, as well as providing some fencing. And then we had made a small cut in technology equipment, and we were able to reinstate that as well. So we were able to put those items back into the budget. Items that are remaining cut, HVAC upgrades and some B&G equipment that we were going to purchase, we will put that off for now. HVAC upgrades, I anticipate, given the news about the additional federal funding that we'll be getting, we'll be able to address those items through a different way. So in order to accommodate these things that we added back and reinstated in the budget, we have a 0.49% increase in taxes, and we actually raised our fund balance usage up about $300,000 so that we could make sure that all of these things were reincorporated back into our budget. Also on the resolution that you'll see, Fund 20, which is our special revenue fund, that's where we account for our grants. You can see here that we will approve them. We don't know what those numbers are at this point. We won't know those numbers until further along, probably later in the school year. We're instructed each year to budget at 85% of what we received this year. So we have done that at this point. And we're including the student activity fund piece in the budget. As I explained last week, we now have to account for the student activity fund through Fund 20. And so now that will be a component of our budget each year. So we have added that piece as well. So that's a little different than what we've done in the past. So this is included in the resolution that's on the agenda as well. Okay. And that is the end of my presentation. And I can take any questions that anybody has at this point. Mrs. Friedel?
I just have one question, and it kind of relates to what was in the public comment. Are we now for the full day kindergarten being funded at the full day rate? Has that been corrected?
So,
Loaded question.
well, I mean, I'm not really sure what they're basing our funding on. You know, I don't know. We do our ASSA count every year. In our ASSA count that we do in October every year, yes, our children are full, considered full day kindergarten. You know, if you look at our state aid, some of the numbers change every year and some of them don't. So what ultimately they're basing what our state aid is it based on enrollment? I'm not sure. But yes, in terms of the ASSA report that we do each year, our children are full time.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, were there any other questions? Okay, I will then turn it over to Mrs. Schultz to move the business and facilities agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Neary. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Item 1, preliminary budget for the 2021-2022. Number 2, maximum travel expenditure. And number 3, motion to approve use of capital reserve to fund approved projects for the 2021-2022 school year. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack, are there any questions? So I can only see a handful of board members on the screen. So
There do not appear to be any hands up, Mrs. Schultz.
Yeah, I don't see any hands up either.
yeah. Okay. So seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
All right, I am going to open up the online voting for board members. You may cast your votes. And we have a unanimous vote.
Great, thank you.
In favor, yes, Mrs. Sugars.
In favor, yes.
Thank you.
We should say that. There was a smile.
We should, yes.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we have no other items for this evening on the agenda for human resources, policy and legislation or strategic planning. So with that, that brings us to the end of our meeting. And I would like to make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Ms. Friedel. All in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Have a good night.